if this were to work, there is so much work that needs to go into it. And the CSC has 4 employees. 4 employees to do this entire job. They've got 4. My local accountant office has 4 employees, and they've got 4 employees that are supposed to police this entire thing. Hey, it's Juck. At number 1, the most beautiful uniform in all of sport. If they brought back the gray stripes, this thing is so far out in front of everybody, you can't touch it. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Hey, welcome to Juck on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me as the cat and mouse game continues. We got a video here on a discussion that I think we got to have on some new rules that have been instated here, kind of a bombshell article as well, and how it affects Ohio State. So not a topic a ton of people want to hear about during the regular season in particular. So I'm going to put it outside of the regular show on a standalone video because I don't want people turning off the regular show because they don't want to hear about this. And I get if you don't want to hear about this, but I have kept up on all this stuff and I know that it can get a little convoluted. So I'm going to try and explain it the best I can, assuming not everybody has kept up on this, but it can be a little difficult. I'll try my best. There's a lot of nonsense and it's tough to explain a lot of this stuff for me. But I'm going to go over the issues that have arisen from the beginning of the House settlement, why those issues have arisen, the new rules that are now coming into effect that have just been announced. And then we're going to get to the bombshell article where collectives are admitting to some things that we knew they were doing and now they're admitting it. And finally, we're going to close with how this affects Ohio State and their current position and where they're headed, in my opinion. But we got to go over these new developments from the beginning. The House settlement and everything in the House settlement, most people thought was going to get challenged and go to court. And without the help of Congress, it was all going to get blown up. The NIL stuff, the revenue sharing stuff, all of it would get blown up unless Congress codified it into law. And that is looking bleaker and bleaker. Now, a lot of people didn't support this from the very beginning because they just wanted to see colleges go straight to collective bargaining with the players. And they felt like this House settlement was a half measure and it was just going to get blown up and waste a bunch of time. But the universities wanted it this way because this cost them way less money than it would if they went straight to collective bargaining. So they're taking their shot with this, right? Now, my opinion, I would love collective bargaining. However, that is not what was on the table right now. So I was of the opinion that I'm just going to go ahead and root for this thing to work. Because if it did work, I actually felt Ohio State in a really good position for the true NIL portion of this to be a big advantage for Ohio and Ohio State, because every business in the state of Ohio wants to be attached to the Buckeyes. And that was a uniquely positioned Ohio State to be big time players in this. If we were doing actual true NIL, of course, we know that's not the way it's happened. Now, you may be someone who wants no rules, pay whatever you want. Doesn't matter. I don't care if the billionaire pays the kids pay for play. That's fair market value. And if that's your take, I get it. I'm 100% with you 99% of the time. This one, I don't feel that way. So if you're someone who wants to eliminate third-party pay-for-play deals and have everybody operating under this same salary cap, and then players can go get their own NIL deals if they want. They can get assistance with NIL deals, but you want true NIL deals. That's what this system was created for, to make that happen. Create revenue sharing and trying to make NIL true NIL as it was intended, not how it had been operating, which was just being called NIL, but it was just straight up pay for play. So the settlement passes, and when it passes, to monitor the NIL, how are they going to make sure these deals are true NIL and not pay for play? They create the clearinghouse, NIL Go. Every deal over $600, you submit it, and NIL Go deems if it's fair market value. And if it is, based on their database of like deals, then they approve the deal. The player and the business get together, money changes hands, all is good. The CSC is the group that was created to essentially be the NCAA or the police of just the house settlement rules. So they didn't want to come up with these new house settlement rules and throw it on board with the NCAA's books and everything they deal with. They created their own police force for this. They're called the College Sports Commission, the CSC. And they enforce the laws specifically of the settlement and nothing else. So that's the setup. Now, how's it going? And how's it going as it pertains to Ohio State? Well, why do we care? As an Ohio State fan, where Ohio State currently stands they are following the rules to the letter of the law and then some. Now, as an Ohio State fan, we want one of two things. We want as many people as possible to jump on board and follow these rules that we are following, or we want it to quickly get blown up. What we don't want is for it to be stuck in limbo as it currently is, because it's not going good for us as it currently is. So blow it up or get everybody on board and punish them. One of the two. That's what we want, because we're currently following the rules and much of our competition are not. And that's not currently working for us. As you know, we got the 9th rated class, and that just doesn't happen in a normal year. That's because of this. In an example, coming up this Saturday, Jalen Brewster, the number 1 defensive tackle in the country in 2027, will announce his decision on Saturday. He's a 5-star defensive tackle from Texas, dad from Ohio, got a Buckeye tat on the forearm. Kid loves Ohio State, loved his time visiting up here. And there are, 6 or so programs in on the, the end of his decision here. Ohio State, one of them. Texas Tech is another. And Ohio State is going to set aside a big amount of revenue share to try to get him. But Texas Tech is going to do the same thing. And then on top of that, they're going to offer him a guaranteed NIL deal, just like they did for the number 1 edge rusher in the class, LaDainian Guyton, and the number 1 quarterback in the class, looking like he's going to swing their way too. So they're going to end up getting this kid because they're going to pay him. And the odds of the odds of Texas Tech getting the number 1 defensive tackle, the number 1 edge rusher, and the number 1 quarterback in a class before this year or last year, less than 0. Now they've got a big, massive billionaire, Cody Campbell, assembling their roster for them. So is this working? Of course it's not. And Texas Tech is an example of this thing not working at all. Some programs are just straight up disregarding the rules. Others are trying to play ball within the bounds of the system, but they're trying to game the rules. And in the last few days, we've got some news on both ends, and we'll start with the new rules. So the NCAA Division I committee has adopted a few new rules, and the rules are to try to rein in the people that were trying to game the system. And there are some who are playing totally outside the rules, and they're to be investigated by the CSC, and we'll get to that in a few. But for the ones who are playing within the system but trying to game the rules, the following rules have been made. Number 1, this rule is trying to make sure that all deals are active. So basically, if I'm, let's say, Notre Dame and I want to sign Jalen Brewster, I'm going to offer him $1 million in revenue share, and then I'm going to offer him a $2 million NIL deal. But how can I give him that $2 million when I don't have the actual deals lined up? Well, I'm going to pay him that $2 million as a contract to just buy his NIL rights. So now I own his NIL rights, even though I don't have those particular deals sold that add up to $2 million. I'm going to say he's worth $2 million to me in NIL deals. I think I'm going to make the money back. Who knows? Maybe I'll make more. And that's what schools were doing in some cases. The NCAA board has now made this illegal. You cannot do that. And the second rule that they made are some players and agents were skeptical that some of these NIL collectors were actually going to pay them. So essentially the university was co-signing off. If the NIL collective fails to pay, goes out of business, etc., the university is signing on the bottom line that they will pay those monies owed. And that is something that they don't want happening. So they've nixed that too. In addition to that, high school players will have to report their NIL deals upon entering college. So those are the 3 new rules. Now, the biggest thing to this entire thing, and the reason I supported it in the beginning, was because it's the best we had, and it was something, anything. And like I said, I thought Ohio State was positioned really nicely to do well in this system as it was designed. The CSC, that's the enforcement arm, blew this thing up in 2 weeks. And that's when I said, all right, this is a farce from now on. So you may have heard me talk about this before, but the collectives started paying players as though they were the business, meaning instead of a collective facilitating a deal between a player and a business, the collective was paying the player directly, acting as though they were the business to sell their collective merchandise, or the collective putting on an event for them to sign autographs and paying the player like that, or to appear at a meet and greet or a coach's clinic, etc. Social media posts. And the CSC said, hey, you're not a business. You can't do this. Well, the House settlement lawyers pushed back on the CSC and said, if you don't let them, we're going to take it to the judge. And the CSC knew they would lose this fight, so they backed off for fear of public humiliation and said, fine, go ahead. The collective can operate as the business. Now, what is the difference between the collective operating as a business or a business operating as a business? And why did this part mean so much to this whole thing? Why did it make it a farce? A collective stated goal is to collect money and give it to the players. Their goal is not to turn a profit. So if I own, for instance, a card collectible shop and I want to set up at a mall and pay a couple of Buckeye players to sit there and sign autographs, I'm going to pay them each $5,000. I'm going to pay the venue $5,000, and I'm going to hope that I get $20,000 coming in. I made $5,000. It was now worth my time. Well, let's say a collective sponsors that same autograph signing. Well, they can pay 20 players $5,000 each. And let's say they get $20,000 in the gate. On paper, they just lost $80,000, but they don't care. The only reason they did it was to pay these players money that they already owe them. So that's the difference there. And they're doing these dog and pony shows to satisfy NIL Go requirements and funnel money that they've already promised to the players. For instance, if I sign you up for a $100,000 NIL deal, I can't under the rules just pay you that $100,000. I got to piecemeal smaller deals off to you and run them through the system. So I'm funneling the money using these events. And we're seeing this with all different sorts of deals. They're being very creative. We've now seen documentary film companies that they're opening to create digital content where they film the guys behind the scenes and they're paying them for that. Essentially just all these different ways to funnel them the money that they owe them, that they promised them when they signed to their school. Now, some were under the impression that there had to be some kind of profit made for this to happen, for NIL Go to approve these deals. And that's not true. NIL Go has no authority to audit the business's figures. They don't have the authority to tell the business how to spend their money or that they're making a bad financial investment. The only thing they have the power to do is to tell that player whether or not he's allowed to accept the deal or not. And for the NIL Go purposes, each one of those individual deals to pay those guys $5,000 to come sign at that event, that's fair market value. Doesn't matter if it's 20, doesn't matter if it's 90 guys on the team. They approve one, they got to approve them all. And quite honestly, you could do the entire roster, but you don't know the entire roster because not everybody's making those kind of deals. That was the obvious reason that the collectives were fighting so hard to be categorized as a business, because they needed this to be able to offer these guys money up front. So when this went down and the CSC said, okay, fine, the collective can be a business, that's when I came on here and said, all right, this is now a total farce as far as the NIL part goes. This is a massive loophole that's been opened up. And quite frankly, it's only a matter of time before all Ohio State's competitors are using this loophole. The Buckeyes are going to have to, at some point, get involved in this gray area, which is now legal. It's a gray area and it feels kind of murky, but it's legal to do this now. And there's no chance that at this point, the NIL part of this works. But remember, that's not the only part. You still got the revenue sharing part, which is the massive part for the universities, probably more than the NIL Go stuff. So funny examples. So that's why the collectives fought so hard to stay as a business. They wanted to be able to operate as the business so that they could funnel that money and make good on those promises that they made. And when the CSC backed down, that's when it was like, all right, this is a massive loophole and a big gray area that if a school chooses to play in, they can offer well over the revenue share. They can offer guaranteed NIL deals so long as they can pay them off on the back end by piecemealing these deals out using the collective as the business. So there was no chance that the NIL part of this was anything but a farce after that. However, there's a couple parts to the settlement, right? You've got the revenue sharing part, which is a big part for the universities. This is just the NIL part. So they're trying to clean the NIL part up with some of these new rules. Now, as for these NIL collectives, these guys obviously came when the schools needed them, right? And paid the payroll for the last 3-4 years. And in a lot of cases, they were developed by local boosters. And they've now found themselves a nice little niche and they don't want to go away. And this settlement is the worst thing that could happen for these collectives. They found a way to make themselves money, probably more important, with a little more power than they had previously with their favorite program. And one of the things they've done from the very beginning is try to undermine this system because they want the whole thing to blow up. They want it to return to how it was. So they've been making it sound like everything's just going horribly. And truth be told, it kind of is, but they've been really pouring it on because they want it to blow up. They want to undermine it. They want nobody to use it or pay attention to it. And we're going to get into this article in a minute because this article is a whole lot of this, but there's also a lot of truth. And it's really this front office sports, and it's been picked up by every sports outlet now. And now some of them have even reached out to more NIL collectives to get more quotes. So we're going to go over this article. But again, important to remember when we go through what these people are saying, doesn't mean it's a lie, but we need to know that they have a big motive. And their motive is they want this whole thing to go away, right? So that's the setup to this article from Front Office Sports. Sources close to NIL collectives have gone on record saying that they are breaking the rules. From the article, since NIL Go launched in mid-June, players, agents, and NIL collective operators have told Front Office Sports that they have waited weeks or longer to receive any feedback on submitted deals. Now, NIL Go stated when they first started that it was going to take them roughly 1 day to process a deal, whether it was going to be approved or not. So it's important to note that when they're saying they've been waiting weeks, that sounds like an unacceptable time period when you promised a day, right? But you are just getting started as well. However, some of these deals are time sensitive. If I'm trying to sign a deal with a player for an event 10 days out, I can't wait 2 weeks or he misses the event and that player misses out on money he could have made. So that is an unacceptable time frame. Back to the article. Last month, a group of collectives reported that about $11 million worth of deals were stuck in limbo. So $11 million in the system waiting to get an answer. Is it approved? Is it denied? If it's denied, we'll adjust it and resubmit it. $11 million stuck in limbo. Important to note, Deloitte refuted that. They said it was not that much. As a result, many across the industry have begun to eschew NIL Go altogether. Eschew is a fancy way of saying, I'm not cooperating. I'm just going to disregard NIL Go and do whatever I want without it. 2 SEC collectives have begun to compensate players for NIL deals that have been submitted to NIL Go, but have not been approved yet, 2 sources from collectives told FOS. So they submitted deals. They're waiting for them to be approved or denied, and it's waiting too long for them. So they're just going ahead and paying the deals anyway. In the case of one of the collectives, both agents and players had began badgering the collectives for payments on the deals that hadn't been approved yet. So the collective decided to pay out some of the smaller deals, 4-figure range, that have not got approved yet. So here's the poor collective explaining that the agent and the player were badgering them for money, so they just had to pay them, even though the deal wasn't approved yet. The source at another SEC collective said multiple deals their athletes have submitted have been languishing in NIL Go for weeks, and the collective decided to just go ahead and pay the players. They said that their athletic department reached out to NIL Go for assistance, but had not heard back. The source from an ACC NIL collective said that they were nearly ready to circumvent NIL Go altogether. The system preparing to pay players for deals that had been submitted had not been approved. All right, so we're hearing from all these NIL collectives having issues, no issues having at Ohio State, right? We're not hearing about any issues from Ohio State at all when it comes to this, with the collective being used as a business, because the Buckeye Sports Group is not operating like that. The Buckeye Sports Group aims to link players through Learfield with businesses around the state, around the country, and that's how Ohio State is facilitating NIL deals, not with guaranteed NIL deals, but with opportunity to the players. You come to Ohio State, you get to work with the VIP treatment from the Buckeye Sports Group, and they're going to get you paid through real fair market values, which is actually going to increase your worth and be a very good thing for you altogether, rather than just paying you money. Now, what all these NIL collectives don't want is to operate like the Buckeye Sports Group, because that puts them out of business. That puts them out of business. They're not needed anymore when a university like Ohio State or anybody else can partner with Learfield and facilitate deals. Now, the local NIL is not needed. You can go away. So they don't want that, which is why they continue to try to sabotage this. They continue with a nugget on enforcement, and here's where this thing gets just wild. So how could the CSC possibly police all these deals are actually being executed and the deliverables are being done? And this is obviously a huge point here. Let's say a player, the collective just paid me $5,000 for X amount of social media posts. And what I'm supposed to do is give them 10 social media posts advertising a new t-shirt that they're selling on the collective website. Who is policing that I made those posts and that I delivered on what I'm supposed to? And this is another reason why the collective being able to operate as a business is garbage. Who's policing a business transaction, right? Let's say I hired Luke Waffle to advertise for my restaurant. And part of that deal is he makes 10 posts on his social media about my restaurant. Who's policing that deal? Well, I am, of course. It's in the contract. I'm the business owner. I'm going to make sure that gets done. But if the business is the collective, they don't give a damn if the player delivers, because the whole thing was a farce in the beginning. They're just funneling the money to him. They wanted to NIL Go to approve it. Like, that's why it's all such a farce. The article continues. It's unclear how CSC would police these rules and violations. The CSC would have to scrutinize thousands of athletes' deals, whether submitted to NIL Go or not. For example, that could mean scouring social media, players' social media accounts to see whether deals submitted match what they posted on Instagram or TikTok. And of course, nobody's going to do this. They continue. The CSC told Front Office Sports it's setting up an anonymous reporting tip line to assist with the process. So if you think that your counterpart school, right? Like right now, if I'm part of the Buckeye Sports Group, I can call and say, hey, we're going up against Texas Tech, and we know they're up to some nonsense with Jalen Brewster. You guys do something about it. So they've set up a tip line, but this is the absolute bombshell of this thing. All these deals that need poured over for this thing to work, all these enforcement, the enforcement that needs done to clean this thing up. If this were to work, there is so much work that needs to go into it. And the CSC has 4 employees to do this entire job. They've got 4. My local accountant office has 4 employees, and they've got 4 employees that are supposed to police this entire thing. This is insane. One of the ACC collective guys says we're literally looking at a system collapsing within the first 5 months of it being launched. And he's correct, of course, but he's saying it because he really is undermining it and wants it to blow up. However, he's right. 4 employees, man, this is just comical. Now, why in the world would you follow anything that any of this has to say when these 4 employees are never going to catch you breaking the rules? And of course, most of the schools have realized this, and they aren't. They aren't. 4 employees, man. I mean, when I read that, I'm just like, this is a total joke. All right. I mean, it already was, but now it's really, really a joke. So where does that leave Ohio State? Let's get to the Buckeyes part of this. Obviously, Ross Bjork was a big player in the beginning of this and setting up the CSC and choosing the leader for the CSC. The CSC has begun no policing of anything. And Ross has taken the stance that everybody wanted this. We can't just turn our backs on it right away because it's, starting off with some hiccups. And he's right. He's put himself in this position as kind of one of the figureheads of this thing. So for him to immediately turn on it, he can't do it. He can't do it. And like I said, when it comes to Ohio State is not, let's take Brewster, for instance. So Brewster is the type of player that Ohio State is going to offer, I don't give a damn what the locker room thinks kind of money, which means massive chunk of revenue share. And it doesn't matter that Trajan Odom or Maxwell Roy are making less than him. That means absolutely nothing here. Jalen Brewster, the type of guy that when he walks in, everybody's going to know, oh, that's why that guy's a very highly paid guy. And there are some guys that are worth that kind of money. Jeremiah, Devin Sanchez, etc. You don't care what Bryce West thinks about what Devin Sanchez is making. Some guys are just don't care kind of money. And Ohio State is offering Jalen Brewster that kind of money, but it's coming from revenue share. Of course, Texas Tech will be offering revenue share and then a guaranteed NIL deal, and Ohio State not operating in that space. Now, this is the gray area. That's the loophole area. And technically, you can still operate in that space and be within the rules. This newest rule here, the first one, that deals must be active, is trying to counteract this part of it. And this is when we're seeing, so instead of classifying the collectives as not a business, this right here is trying to take care of it with this rule. It's obviously not going to fly. Not to mention, even if it did, you got 4 people policing it. And this is the space that Ohio State will need to adapt to operate in if they intend on winning battles like this. And they're not going to win this Brewster battle. That's pretty clear. Even if they were in the space of operating with guaranteed NIL deals and they had a boatload of money that they wanted to spend on Brewster, this is not the kind of guy you're going to win anymore, because there's always going to be a couple of guys in college football that are just going to pay whatever it takes. And when you've got a billionaire who has made it his commitment to do whatever it takes for his team, he's always going to beat you. And he can always beat you by enough that it'll make the kids say, yeah, that's too much of a difference. And honestly, if we were in this climate, I think a couple of years ago, Jeremiah, like, what would this guy have offered Jeremiah Smith coming out of high school? I think probably too much money that he couldn't have said no. So it's not just this guy. We got Ellison at Michigan, and we're going to see these billionaires swooping up those top dogs. So it's not really, it's just going to be really, really tough to get those kind of guys moving forward, like those true ridiculous type of guys, because of these billionaire types. And I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that Ohio State operating in the space of, we got the 9th ranked recruiting class, isn't what they want. A lot of people said, they're just changing their recruiting strategy. That's clear. That's not happening. Mark Pantoni said that in his employee review. The goal is to get a top 5 class every year. That's what they want to do. And they're going to need to, at some point, I think, pivot to the guaranteed NIL space, play a little bit more in that gray area, which they're not touching right now. And anybody who, honestly, there's been a thing going around for a while now that Ohio State has pivoted, that Ross Bjork has told the staff that they can be a little more free. Now, there are two ways guys are getting paid, right? 2 ways. They're getting paid through revenue share, and that has nothing to do with Ross Bjork. That's Mark Pantoni. That's Ryan Day figuring out, all right, this is the football chunk of revenue share. How are we going to allocate it and to whom? And then there is NIL and NIL opportunities that's going through the Buckeye Sports Group. Now, None of those deals are guaranteed, and every player has as much access to the Buckeye Sports Group as anybody else, but they're not guaranteed. So what is Ross Bjork supposedly telling these coaches? Where's that money coming from? He's saying you can spend more money. Until there's guaranteed NIL deals, that's just not what's happening. It's just not. So I don't believe that that's happening. I don't believe that there was some conversation saying, okay, go ahead, you can get more aggressive. And until there are guaranteed NIL deals, and we'll know when there are, we'll know by the results, we're not going to see much change here. I still think the Buckeyes brand, the revenue share, and the talent of recruiting on the coaching staff will keep them in the top 10. But cracking a top 5 class without offering guaranteed revenue sharing or guaranteed NIL deals, I just don't think it's in the cards. So how long does it continue like this before either this whole thing implodes and Ohio State can now legally, right, technically legally, do whatever they want with their money, or when does Ohio State actually pivot to guaranteed NIL deals? I don't know. You got Ross Bjork, who is a figurehead for this. You've got Ohio State legal, who is probably very much against Ohio State doing that. And really, they're the ones calling the shots here as to what everybody's allowed to do. And we will know when Ohio State starts offering guaranteed NIL deals. And if we see them pull off a miraculous, if Jalen Brewster commits to Ohio State, well, that'll open our eyes. If we see a flip this cycle of somebody that they were in on previously that spurned them, and now all of a sudden they end up winning, okay, now we know the writing's on the wall here. They're probably relinquishing control and doing the NIL guaranteed deals. But until we see that, no, nothing's changed in that regard, in my opinion. So that is currently where we're at. If you have any questions, you can email me at juckonbucks@gmail.com or put them in the comments. And I appreciate you guys. I know this is a bit of a headache to follow. It was a real headache to explain. I hope I did a decent job. But onward and upward we go. Jalen Brewster, not going to be a Buckeye Saturday. I don't care. I love the ones we got. By the way, Damari Simeon looking like a total beast. And that was a score. That was a big time score. Of course, it is football season. We don't need to talk a bunch about recruiting, but we do got some visits coming up this weekend, which we will go over in tomorrow's show, as well as I'm going to do a little piece on the private equity stuff, right? We got some private equity interested in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten been taking meetings, but there are 2 guys pushing back, 2 holdouts, 2 sworn enemies linking arms on this one. Wait till you hear this story. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Juck 'em Bucks out.